All right, we're starting late. It's 10:01. We are missing one of our members, but we have a quorum, so we can get started. We do have a change to the agenda, I believe. Bridget can confirm, but I think we need to pull off the public hearing one again, right?
Yes, thank you, Amanda. That will be pulled, and we hope to have that at our next meeting.
Because you said it needs to go to HED.
That's correct.
Okay. So let's see, that's resolution C and D. I think that's right. Okay. So we'll hopefully get to see those next month. Any other changes to the agenda? All right. I don't believe we have any comments from the public. Let's do the minutes of February 2nd. Can somebody move those? Susan moves. Seconded by Dan. Any questions, comments, corrections to the minutes? All right, let's go ahead and vote. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. We have an appointment, advisory board, to the Library Board of Trustees. Liz Chabot, trustee member, term expires December 31st, 2024. And she has been on already for a while, so she's, Mike moves, Susan seconds, thank you. Questions, comments? All right, all in favor? Thank you very much. All right, and Jay is here to talk to us about, I lost my page, but you're going to talk to us about something.
Yeah, I'll talk to you about the couple appointments to our temporary hearing panels that we do each year.
Great. I guess this is a resolution, so let's go ahead and move that. Dan moves, seconded by Susan. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Jay. Thank you.
So each year we appoint 6 temporary hearing panel members to supplement our 3 permanent Board of Assessment Review members. So we take that one Board of Assessment Review, we create 3 separate hearing panels that are a little specialized. We go with a commercial, an urban, and a rural panel. This year we have one new and one returning individual. Jan DeRoos was on our Board of Assessment Review, and Jan ended up moving out of the county. Jan's still a resource. I'm still pestering him. He is a brilliant man still. So, and then Jim Lawrence also had to resign from these hearing panels. So in their place, Susan Lustig will be coming back. Susan is a leading realtor with Warren Real Estate. And then we also have Chip Ray coming in again. Way back in the day, Chip used to serve on our local advisory boards, and I think his dad actually served on this Board of Representatives back in the day. So Jim Ray. So we would have Kevin Cartmill, Chip Ray, Josh Lauer, Susan Lustig, Judy Malice, and Dean Shea to supplement our full board, which is Martha Preston, Edie Spaulding, and Mike Cannon. I simply can't say enough about these 9 individuals, the quality of people they are, the professionals that they are, and their willingness to do this each and every year. And these temporary hearing panel members have to go through training each year. The full board only has to do it once every 5 years, but they still take the time, go to the training, and are willing to sit and listen to property owners.
Yeah, it's a time commitment for sure. They do get a small compensation, which is good, but it's not a lot.
Correct. Yeah, they're not doing it for the money.
Yeah.
They're doing it for the service.
Okay, questions or comments about this, Mike?
Yeah, I wondered if you could give us a brief description of, if I come in with a complaint about my assessment, and am scheduled for this board, what happens at the board, through the board, and after the board?
Yeah. So this is the time for that property owner to present information about their property value to this independent board. So they'll sit down. Typically, this board will ensure that the inventory of the property is correct, that we have the number of beds and bathrooms correct, the acreage, any outbuildings, the condition of the property is correct first. And then the property owner will then provide any information about their house's value. Did they have a recent fee appraisal? Did they pull sales of recent properties that we have listed through a couple different search engines that we have on our website? Or go to Zillow and just search around for sales. I know I probably have too much free time that I just poke around Zillow, not even here, but. And then at that point, no decision is really made during that hearing. The Board of Assessment Review will then meet again in mid-June, late June, and based upon the information that's presented by the property owner, if there is a change necessary, they'll make it during their executive session. My office is not present when they're meeting, and then they'll just give us a list of those changes. So they'll say, you know, parcel 1-1-1 should be reduced to 250,000. 1-1-2, no change. And then from that list, we then create the change notices, which are mailed to the property owner on July 1. Now, that doesn't really end a property owner's avenues to contest their assessment. Depending on what type of property, if they disagree with the determination of the Board of Assessment Review, they can go to a small claims assessment review, or they can file for a Article 7 tax certiorari proceeding as well. But it depends on what type of property they have, if it's owner occupied or not, which avenue they can take.
So I'm a single family owner, house owner, and I don't like what they did, and I want to have it reviewed again. So then what happens?
Yep. So at that point, they'll file the small claims assessment review application. Probably around 30, 40 years ago, the New York State created this as a low-cost means for 1 to 3 family owner-occupied residences to contest their assessment. So that's filed over at the county clerk's office. It is a legal, pseudo-legal proceeding. I think it's $30 to file. They'll present the information. The last few years, we've had some judicial hearing officers from the state court that are assigned these cases. They'll schedule the hearing. The property owner presents their information. My department presents our information. And then that point, the hearing officer then renders a decision. At that point, then the decision is final, once that hearing officer makes their determination.
And if I'm a commercial property owner, I have to get a lawyer and bring an action?
Correct. I mean, necessarily you don't have to, but with the complexities of the cases and making sure everybody is served, then you would have to file that Article 7 proceeding through the Supreme Court, which is really me, my department, the county being sued by that individual for over-assessing them.
Thanks for that, Jay.
Okay, other questions about this resolution? All right, let's vote. All in favor? That's unanimous, thank you. Jay, while you're here, anything else you want to tell us about, or if folks have questions?
Yep, we've started sending out those assessment change notices for this year. The first batch went out on February 10th for the city, Danby, and Caroline. The second batch went out the 24th, which I believe was just the town of Ithaca. And our phones are dead. I'm absolutely, completely shocked at just how inactive we are getting people coming into our office. Yesterday, we had 10 appointments, just 2 for each of the appraisers that we had on schedule. Today, we had 9. And I don't know Even next Monday when the town of Ithaca starts up, I think each appraiser only has 5 appointments. Typically the first day everyone wants to get in there. I'm baffled by the response, but the real estate market here is still crazy. We have a low supply of houses. Even with interest rates going up, that's actually caused values to go up because people aren't moving from one house to the next. And when that doesn't happen, you have less supply on the market. And with the same demand, less supply, that's just going to drive prices up as well. So at some point, maybe we'll see the market turn, but I'm just not seeing it. I went and talked to Warren Real Estate, talked to one of their realtors. She had a property listed for $390. She sold it, I think, 2 years ago to the current owner for $340. It got into a bidding war and ultimately sold at $520. So it's, if you have a nice, very desirable property, it is still nice and very desirable, especially to move right in. So we'll see where we're going with this, but.
Wow. Rich, question?
Yeah, I got my change notice. I was sad and shock. And I'm wondering, because it seems like if it's a rising tide, everybody comes up the same amount. Your taxes shouldn't change dramatically, but mine did. Is there an area of the county where taxes are going down?
It really all depends on what your percentage increase was. The majority of these increases were just residential properties. So even if everybody went up 10% within that town, but we had one neighborhood at 5%, typically your proportional share has been reduced.
So are there neighborhoods where that's happened and their taxes are going down?
I would have to take a look at that. With this year, and then, the impact notice only shows what would have happened to your assessment if the taxing jurisdictions don't raise taxes for this upcoming year. They don't raise what that tax levy is.
And both of those things are happening, so, yeah.
Well, we'll see. For the city, I don't believe the Ithaca City School District has announced anything on their budget. And I mean, we
I guess
may
I was
have
talking about 2022. They
Yeah.
both did, the city and the school district, substantial raises.
Correct. So, the
On
city
top of
school
the
districts went at an 8.5% increase. The city of Ithaca was 9.7%. But I can see the tide turning within the public on holding taxing jurisdictions responsible for the amount of money that they spend and not get confused by a tax rate figure.
Hope so. Thanks.
Yeah. Dan?
I mean, just to remind everybody, the county's tax did not go up. Our tax levy has stayed flat for the last 2 years. Depends on your assessment, et cetera, et cetera. But just worth reminding, right? Everyone's taxes went up except ours.
Yeah, and in fact, I had a chance to talk to the Landlords Association on Monday, and I made that point that, if we as politicians care about housing, taxes matter, that all that money is just passed through to tenants, and if we want affordable housing, we have to be very careful about just spending new money.
Mike?
Yeah, that's a really good point. But what's happening is with these houses, like you just described that example, Jay, is the amount of taxes for that particular house is really leaving the average people, even the more affluent average people, so that they can't afford to make the payments, and we have interest rates going up. So I guess the word is gentrification. We're seeing that. And it's too bad because we aren't on the other end doing anything to build more affordable single-family houses. And I'm glad we've got a housing committee this year. And I just heard about some state money for infrastructure. And I really hope that committee starts looking at how we might be able to assist through grants or otherwise get some water and sewer where there could be some single-family houses built. I think we need two-bedroom houses again. I think they would go pretty rapidly if they got built. But yeah, if you look in Lansing or downtown Ithaca, or even moving toward Dryden, the prices are going up, and it's giving people pause. Do we stay here, or do we vote with our feet and move to Tennessee?
Very true, Mike. Other questions or comments, or?
Yeah, no, I know a couple of municipalities are looking at some sort of tax increment financing in order to pay for that infrastructure to come in, and then the resulting houses would then reimburse for that infrastructure. Because when I talk to housing builders, different developers, the cost of putting in roads, electric, sewer, sewer extension lines, that's just too cost prohibitive for them to lay out that money. This is definitely, in my opinion, one of those cases, if we build it, they will come. If we can get that infrastructure in. But yeah, and until we can get more supply of for sale housing, it's just basic economic law of supply and demand. We still have people wanting to move here. If we had more houses, in my opinion, we would need less apartments, because people would be able to move out of those apartments into houses. We still need more apartments, but we would need less of them because we were able to go with that life cycle of housing. You move an apartment, you move to a starter home, the family home, the bigger family home, and then you downsize. Right now, that life cycle isn't happening.
Dan had something else, and then Mike.
You mentioned that Danby and Caroline assessments notices went out, and I got mine 3 weeks ago or so, and it was a substantial increase. But I agree with you. I have not heard a peep as compared to last year when we all in my town got substantial increases, and I heard a lot. So I don't know what's going on either, but maybe our education efforts last year paid off a little bit. Maybe I'll be optimistic.
And I'll be out in Speedsville on March 13th to give a little talk on what we do. So,
Mike?
Don't want to prolong it, but I think I've heard from some people, even though we haven't gotten our notices yet, but I think people are shell-shocked, and they're just kind of, they don't, nothing I can do about it, this is going to happen. And it's kind of sad. I also fault the fact that we don't have aggressive media that brings these stories and shows both sides. And we lost that at the local level. Maybe we can find out what's happening in Buffalo at the Ithaca Journal, but we don't find out much what's going on in Ithaca. So I think that's really, really important that we continue to try to make people understand what's happening. And much of it's just beyond our control.
Definitely. Okay. Anything else, Jay?
nope, I think that's it.
All right. Well, as always, you bring riveting discussion to this group. So thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Good day. All right. Moving on to some administration resolutions. And I see Bridget up there. So let's go ahead and look at the first one, which is the acceptance of ARC grant funds to develop the Tompkins County Strategic Operations Plan. Somebody like to move that? Rich? Susan seconds? Hi, Bridget. You want to, or Lisa is there too? Want to talk about that?
Sure. Good morning. Thank you. So as you've heard, Lisa has at various points updated us all on this strategic operations planning process that we are soon to embark upon. In order to do so, we had applied for some funding upon the encouragement of Southern Tier 8 Regional Board through the Appalachian Regional Commission, the federal agency, and we had just recently received notification that we had indeed received that award. So we are seeking to accept the $160,000 grant award in order to begin this process. We had already issued an RFP and gone through the process of selecting a consultant to help us with this, so we're well ahead of the game and we'll be able to begin the process as soon as this award money is formally accepted. This is a matching grant. However, the match that we'll be providing on behalf of the county is all in kind through our staff resources and work.
Great. Questions and comments about this? Sounds good. When will the RFP process sort of be wrapped up or make a decision, or how long is that going to take?
Yep, so the decision has already been made on the consultant. We've done the interviews and we've selected one. At this point, it's just a matter of formalizing the contract, which we can do as soon as this funding is accepted by the legislature. We can move forward with that.
Okay, great. And then we can get started.
Yep.
Excellent. Mike?
Who is that consultant?
I don't, Lisa, am I allowed to share that?
I would rather wait if possible to provide that notification.
All right.
All right. Thank you. We ready to vote? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing that unfold.
As do we.
All right. Next resolution is some policies. Resolution to update the Administrative Policy Manual, Policy 1-29, Standards of Conduct, 2-4, Hiring and Processing New Employees, and 4-8, Workers' Compensation. Can somebody move that? Rich moves, seconded by Dan. Thank you. I'll just note that we did go through Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee with this. So I did sit in on and had questions on that conversation, and we suggested a few changes. But other questions or comments, or do you want to talk about each one separately? Or if people just want to jump in if there's anything?
Amanda, may I make a quick request?
Yes.
So the abolishment of policy 0129, standards of conduct, there was misunderstanding, miscommunication. It does appear that that policy had been previously abolished, I believe in 2021. So if we could make an amendment to this resolution to remove that, that would be great.
Okay. All right. So we already abolished it, so we don't need to again.
That is correct.
All right. So let's see.
I'd consider that friendly.
Okay, Rich, and did you second it? Okay, so that is a friendly amendment, so we don't have to talk about standards of conduct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the other two, Dan?
Yes, thank you. I have a few questions and comments. First of all, I think we should abolish it again, just to really, drive home the point.
We have no standards of conduct.
Can you tell me what the green ink means on these policies? There's red ink, black ink, red ink, and green ink.
Green means go.
And maybe even purple ink. I'm not sure what color that is. Seriously, I'm not sure what that was.
It likely reflects the various edits that were made via track changes. I know after the BCP committee meeting, some additional changes were also requested. So Ruby went in and made those. So maybe you're seeing the series of updates that were made to the policy in different colors.
Sometimes in Word documents, when you have multiple people doing track changes, they will appear in different colors.
Okay, thank you. So there's no significance other than it's an artifact.
I think it's just different people on the same document.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you. So here's my only real question then.
It's pretty.
It's actually very pretty, the colors.
Packet page 25, it's on the workers' comp policy. The very bottom of the page, section 3B, it says the workplace employee injury / illness envelope. I'm just wondering what that is.
May I, Bridget?
Yes, please.
Okay. Hi. When there is an injury, there's a packet of information that's included in that envelope that the employee has to complete and send back to HR in order for it to be processed as workers' comp. So it's an envelope with some information in it that they have to process that claim.
Like a packet of information.
Don't ask me. It was named before I got here, Dan.
Okay.
We didn't kill that one.
Well, I'd like to suggest doing it in pink. We haven't used that color yet. All right, I mean, all right, if that's clear, if it makes sense in the context, I just couldn't quite figure it out. Okay, I'm done.
And the envelope is already prepared to go where it needs to go. So neither staff or employees have to figure out, who to send this type of information to.
So if there was an incident, someone would come to you and say, give me that envelope of information, and then that would contain everything they needed.
Right. When we're notified that envelope, they get that envelope, everything they need to process that claim is provided to them.
In there, okay. Rich?
I just had a bookmark I'd like to put in on page 19. Item C2, there's a new hire orientation. And to talk about a different committee, the Budget, Capital and Personnel Committee, at some point it would be nice to get a review of what's done during employee orientation. I was curious.
Oh, we can provide that at any point. You can actually join us on Monday if you like.
I'd be thrilled if my calendar permitted. I don't know.
We have an orientation packet. If you like, we can send you a copy of that.
If we could just talk about it at BCP, I just think it would be an interesting item to touch on briefly. But of course, that's up to Deborah.
I like that you're making work for other committees to do.
Yeah, I'm on that committee, which is unfortunate. Yeah.
Oh, we could do it in this committee.
We could do it here. We could do it
here,
both
but
committees.
Technically, that's BCP.
I just recently went to the new employee orientation.
Oh, yeah, there you
I
go.
have a packet I'd be happy to bring in and share with you. Yeah, it was really well organized. It was really well done. Compliments to the staff. I enjoyed it. It was very thorough.
I guess what triggered me thinking about it was I was curious about whether there's discussion of the mission statement that the county worked on and the values.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
That was covered.
That was my specific question.
Yeah. Yeah, and they did. They covered that really well.
Okay.
Larry Workman, he was fabulous. They were great.
Great. Okay. Other questions, comments, bookmarks? If something else comes up, of course, this has to go to the full legislature, so you can certainly bring up other questions at that point. Okay, we ready to vote? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do love the policies, so keep bringing them.
We sure will.
Thanks, Ruby, for being here. All right, let's go on to, we have a couple of discussion topics. Once again, I went through, and actually fairly entertaining. I had to ask my kid how to, because I only have Robert's Rules in book form. Yeah.
There's a couple other resolutions here.
Oh.
Were we going to do those? Or?
Sorry, we had to pull those again.
Oh, and I apologize for coming in late. I had a phone call that the person wouldn't get off the phone.
No worries. We're glad you're here. Yeah, Bridget said that has to go to HED first. So.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have Robert's Rules in book form, and I have to copy and paste, and I had to have my kid show me how to how do you copy and paste on a book form on your scanner. Anyway, he's doing crazy animation and all sorts of 3D work, and I'm copying and pasting a book. Okay, so I found this interesting. I think, we often, the legislature will often have something that we want to postpone or table, or we never quite know the language or the terms that we're supposed to use. So I just pulled out, there's the first section on what does it mean to postpone indefinitely, which I didn't even know that was a thing. You can actually basically say, I want to postpone this indefinitely, and that just sort of kills the whole thing, which would be kind of cool if there was something you really didn't want to talk about. I think, I don't know, I thought I included, yeah, there's a couple of examples, so I thought that was kind of interesting. And then in a different section of the book, there's the postpone to a certain time. And that there's a lot more detail on that. And it doesn't pull up the question of what to table means, like, which I guess I'll have to look that up for next time. But so this is just to postpone, and then what the rules are for, debate and when you can pull it back up and that sort of thing. So I just found this to be interesting. I hope it was a little bit informative for you all. And if you want to discuss or have questions, or Dan does.
So first of all, I just came back from the NISAC conference, and there was finally a workshop on Robert's Rules of Order. I've been waiting.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not kidding. I've been in elected office 16 years now. Every single conference I've wanted this, I request it, and they finally did one. And I loved it. And I'm going to report more about it a little after this conversation. And then,
Great.
But just on this particular topic, this one did come up. And what was said was, laying on the table is more temporary. So one example that the presenter gave was you're discussing some item, and all of a sudden the president of the school board walks into the meeting, and you want to accommodate their schedule. So you can lay something on the table right there, lay the current discussion on the table. So you're literally just like parking it temporarily. You hear from the school superintendent, whoever I said. Then when they're done, you say thank you, and then you go back to your previous business by taking it off the table. So that's one of the ways to use it. It's very temporary. And then I believe he said the rule about it is you lay it on the table, and it must come off the table by the end of the next meeting, and if it doesn't, then it disappears. So it's a temporary thing that if you don't act on it within, by the end of the next meeting, it disappears. So that was that. That's what I learned about that.
So there must be a section in there specifically about that phrase, to lay on the table.
There must be, but I haven't looked it up.
Okay. Maybe I'll look it up for next time. More?
Yes, but unless if someone else wanted to go first.
Okay. Mike?
Excuse me. Excuse me, but I can never remember a motion to postpone indefinitely being used. But indefinite means it's just not definite of when it goes to. Does that mean that it can then be brought up at any time again?
That's not how I understood it. But
I just read through this and I don't see it that point mentioned.
yeah.
But it seems to me indefinite doesn't mean forever. It can mean an unknown time.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I'm looking at 14:13, which if you do a postpone to a definite date or to a certain time, then it's got to come up then. But
that's a postponement to.
right, but then it says it cannot be taken up before the time for which it is set, except by reconsidering the vote on the motion to postpone or by suspending the rules by a 2/3 vote, which would suggest there's something extra required if you do postpone indefinitely. But maybe I'm
Right.
wrong.
I think maybe the difference is if you postpone indefinitely, you're not saying when you'll bring it back. So therefore, there is no time to bring it back. Whereas if you postpone definitely, you say
To a certain time.
we will bring this back at the next meeting, and that's when you have to bring it back. So I don't know, Mike. Maybe you could at some.
I just think in a future meeting, you could move to lift it off the table at that point, and if it got enough votes, you could do that.
Yeah, I think actually reading further, you're right. 14:9, it says, yeah, it postpone indefinitely kills the measure. You're polite,
that
you're doing
point,
it
yeah.
politely, but it doesn't
Right.
prevent you from bringing it back.
I-
Okay.
My thought is I recommend we never use it. The other two have worked fine.
Yeah. Rich?
Where I get confused is what we want to say is table.
Right.
And table is different, and there's confusion also because in England, table means to bring it up rather than set it aside. But we often say table when we mean postpone, right?
Right. So, okay, so I definitely need to look up if there is a difference between postpone and table. What?
We've always treated them differently.
Yeah. It'd be good to have the specifics. Katrina?
Okay, my predecessor kind of explained it a little bit to me. Table is not debatable, and it's to be considered at that meeting or the next meeting. And postpone can't be considered the same meeting. That is to push it off to another meeting, whether it's indefinite or a date certain.
That is debatable, postpone?
That is debatable. That was always the difference. Table was not debatable and postpone was, so.
But that's laying on the table, what you just described. So tabling is a shorthand for laying on the table.
Laying on the table or tabling. Okay, right, so, right, because it lists all the things here for postponing. It is debatable, says so right there. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you, Katrina. So postponing is to another date or meeting. Okay, other thoughts? Anybody want to postpone this discussion?
Well, I have more to share if
yeah.
we're done with that topic.
Sure, yeah, go for it.
Be brief. So, like I said, this is a really great workshop. I wasn't sure if it would be so like basic that it wouldn't mean anything to me, but that was not the case at all. So I'm still going through my notes, so I don't have all of it yet. So some of it was just a little bit like, oh, you know, here are some common mistakes, but that really wasn't the focus of the thing. It was really, to me, it was about the beauty of a well-run meeting. And that's the goal of all this parliamentarian and Robert's Rules stuff, right? To make a really good meeting, to make it so that everything's clear and everything moves forward. And I could see in this person's mind it was an art form. He was trying to convey that. Okay, and there were a few little common mistakes, so I'll just mention them. So a few of them that were whatever. So the word nay is not in Robert's Rules of Order. He said horses neigh. You have to say no. Kind of a small one. Another small one was when people say so moved, which I like to say too. It just sounds so, I don't know, it's like Old English or something like that. That's not in there either. You have to actually say, I make a motion to, whatever. Okay, here are some more substantial ones.
I'm sticking with so moved.
Yeah, I like the sound of it. I don't think I'm going to change it.
We'll make a local
Add that
rule
into
here.
the rules of the legislature.
Yes.
You can say so moved.
So these are some that I need to do a little more research on myself to see if they are in our rules and exactly what Robert says about it. But one is he said that motions that come out of a committee don't need to be seconded. I thought that was interesting. It's not real. It doesn't really matter. I don't think it's ever going to really be a practical thing. But he said the fact that it came out of committee is a second. So okay.
Yeah, at the library board, that's how they do it. Okay. And I've always thought that's weird, but maybe that's the right
Apparently
way.
they're right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then here's another one that, again, I want to research a little more, but he said that when you start debate, you're supposed to find out some indication of who's on which side of the debate, pro or con, yes or no, and you're supposed to alternate who you call on. We don't do that, and I'm not sure I want to do that, but I thought that was really interesting.
We did talk about that couple of 3 years ago, 4 years ago maybe, so that if we had a really serious thing, it would only be fair to try to get an idea of doing that, and thought maybe the chair could try to do it that way, but we never really actually implemented that.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about it either. It's just a new idea to me. I was like, oh, think about that some more. And then those are the only specifics for now. Like I said, I'll have a little more to say. But the other thing I want to say is, so this person's name was Robert Robinson. He's a professional parliamentarian, and that's a specific definition, and it's like the highest level. And his presentation was really informative, but also like really entertaining. And I was thinking that I might do a little exploration to see if TCOG, the Tompkins County Council of Governments, might be interested in sponsoring this person to come up here. He lives in Brooklyn, to do a presentation for like all the boards, and including not-for-profits if they want to join, because many not-for-profits follow Robert's rules as well. So if we got a lot of people in and spread the costs around a little bit, I'm thinking he's not cheap, but I haven't even looked into that yet. So that's all I have to share. Thank you for
That's great.
listening
Great
to my
idea.
little report.
And
Dan?
sorry, I missed that.
Excuse me.
Mike.
Was his piece taped? Could we obtain that from NISAC?
It's not taped, and he is going to provide his slides to the participants, but he requested that you don't just photocopy and run off 200 copies and send it to everybody, because he makes a living out of this.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I thought you were going to say there at the end that you were considering going into this line of work.
It crossed my mind. He started out by talking about what it was. If I remember correctly, he said there was a 1,200-word test that he had to pass, a 1,200-question test on Robert's Rules of Order, and he had to get quite a high grade. Oh, I will mention one more thing. He highly recommends getting Robert's Rules in Brief, Volume 3. He said, obviously the big book is his Bible, but it's not, as we all know, it's not practical to just read through that thing and absorb it. And so I haven't looked into it yet myself, but I'll probably get a copy.
Rich.
Yeah, I have the big book and I have the in brief, and
Okay.
it's far more accessible. And I'd make the comment that it's interesting to me. I actually spent some time on Robert's Rules of Order in my class I teach, because on its surface, it's supposed to do exactly what you're talking about, that it's supposed to run an elegant meeting. And at the same time, you can misuse those rules to nefarious purposes. And, the big book is in some ways a problem, because it's too much, and there's too much buried in there.
He did use the phrase several times, I'm not trying to teach you how to weaponize Robert's Rules.
Well, and some people do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mike.
That was a recommendation. Why don't we recommend that our legislative staff get copies of that for each of the legislators and charge it to the county? I think that would make sense. We could just leave them on our desks when we leave.
That could come out of the training budget.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and look into
I don't
it.
think it'd be awfully expensive.
Wouldn't be.
The brief one.
So moved.
You can even buy mine used, I don't mind.
I moved that.
So who actually moved it?
I have found, that's great. I'm sorry I missed that. I have found when I read a small section, there's always something I didn't know. And that was been my question for years, is like, are we as a legislature supposed to do all these things? And some of them don't make sense, and we have our own rules. So I'm glad we're talking about this.
I just wanted to say I think it's a great idea to have some training in this. When I first went to the library as director, I didn't realize we had to use Robert's Rules of Order, and I just played fast and loose. Sure, I did so many illegal things, and I had to get a book, and I actually live with a parliamentarian. So, yeah, I had to go home and say, what does this mean? I think it would be great, and I think people would appreciate it. I think there's an assumption, because so many not-for-profits use Robert's Rules of Order for their meetings, but I don't know that everyone, especially new board members, really understand. So
Yeah.
I wish I'd gone to that. I went to a different session, but you made it sound so exciting.
Hopefully we'll bring them here and you can get it here.
That's great. If you're going to look into that, keep us informed.
Amanda?
Yeah, Mike.
First of all, I want to thank you for doing this. This is very informative, very good thing for this committee to do, and fun. And the other thing I want to say is I think Robert's Rules was designed for Congress. And when you've got now 435 people in the House of Representatives, and they're trying to run a meeting, and we have trouble with 14, you can imagine why they need a strict set of rules like that and why they have professional parliamentarians. And I know Congress people down there, if they want to do something, they go to the parliamentarian and say, now what do I need to do to make this happen? And talk about weaponizing, they come say, what do I need to do to make it not happen? You know. And the parliamentarians have to serve everybody equally.
Yeah. Now we learned you can just postpone it indefinitely.
Definitely.
Definitely.
Did we vote on that motion? I was serious making that motion. Let's get those books.
I second it.
Okay. Rich moves that the clerks will purchase a copy of Robert's Rules in brief for legislators. Mike seconds. Dan?
I mean, do we need a dollar figure in there? Do we need to say what account it's coming out of, that kind of stuff?
Well,
It should come out of the training
all that.
budget.
Let us know. And then,
Yeah.
I would assume that the administrator would need one, and our direct reports and those kind of things. So
I did just do a quick search to see if I could find it pretty easily, and they average about $8 a book.
All right.
board that.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, I think the training budget is probably a good place, or if you think something is better.
I'll check. If we need to do it out of a different account, we can go ahead and.
Okay, great. All in favor? Good job. The trouble is, we're going to be so informed about this, and then we're going to have to inform our colleagues who are going to still be saying things like "so moved." So, but hopefully you'll give a little report to the whole legislature too.
I will.
Okay. Okay. Great, thank you. Let's talk about weighted voting. Why don't you go ahead, Mike, to start?
I was just going to say, last time I had done any research outside of the actual figures for our county, but I did an internet search and brought you in some articles that I thought you might like to look at. One of them looked really interesting to me, but it's from a journal called, must be Legislative Studies Quarterly, Gestor, but I typed in our library and they wouldn't give me a copy of it or let me print it. So I've got to figure out how to do that. And Susan's offered to help. But it looked like a good article about weighted voting going back to the 80s and talking about New York State with their counties are about the only ones that use weighted voting. And so I thought that was interesting. Then I also got some details out of some of the other counties. There was one from Warren County that talked about what their actual weighted system was as it got changed from 21 to 22, and there you can see different towns, their weight changed based on the 2020 census. Look, I think that was the one that said there was a couple of the districts that gained more power, I guess would be the word to say, because of that. There was just a list in Washington County of its weighted voting and what was 2/3 so that they could calculate a 2/3 vote if they needed one, which is probably one of the times it gets called out to actually vote the weighted voting. And then I thought the one from Steuben County was kind of interesting. They talked about, they had put forth a resolution to reduce the number of their legislators from 13 to 11 in Steuben, and that had failed. So and that would have meant they didn't have to have weighted voting if that had passed. But because it failed, they had to go back to weighted voting and have a different value calculated for the various districts because there was no district boundary changes over there. I think I was looking for one for Cayuga. I didn't see anything on that, but I know Cayuga reduced the number of legislators. It's only Tompkins that is talking about increasing the number of legislators, in my view, unfortunately. But, so that's something, some reading material for folks. I do think under the Constitution, we have an obligation to have one person, one vote as much as possible, which I don't think we're doing right now. And I would like to get this article for everybody, and once I get that, I will distribute it. So that's the update I have today.
The JSTOR article you're talking about?
Yes. I think there's sort of an abstract of it here.
Right, yeah, okay. There's the introduction or whatever. Rich?
I just note for the record that we had pretty extensive discussions a couple years ago about did we want to have a short term to allow us to catch up with the new districts. And ultimately, we voted not to do that. And this leaves us in this situation where for 3 years, we are out of sync with what the new district boundaries would be otherwise. And I guess weighted voting would address that issue. I'm looking forward to reading the articles, but I have some trepidation about the impacts weighting voting would have on our deliberations. Certainly most votes probably wouldn't have any impact at all because it would really only apply in the situations where we had a very close vote. I come from, I think, the district with the most people in it at this point, and it's grown more than any other district because of all the new development in the downtown core and College Town. At the same time, I probably was elected with one of the fewest vote totals. People just don't vote in my district because it's such a high student population. And so you have to draw some decisions from that. Is it just people? Is it voters that care? And does it really change the way we should be doing things? I don't know. I guess I'd like to hear more about the mechanics of how it would impact. I assume most votes would just be raise your hand, but if it was a close vote, we might need to do a separate tally. Is that how it works?
Yeah, somebody I would think would call for the vote, just like you call for a roll call. You just call for a roll call on the weighted vote, and then you do the calculation. It was interesting, there was a lot of information when I was looking about weighted voting like in corporations, and there's quite a lot of mathematicians, I said, have come up with different voting schemes. I thought that something like that happened here in Tompkins County, although thanks to Brittany, she's been trying to do research for me. She hasn't been able to find when Tompkins County used it, so I'm beginning to wonder if they never actually implemented it because the public reaction was so adverse to it. And that would have been after, I think after the 70 census. So we're going to continue to look for that and see what we can find on it.
I have this sheet that Mike gave us a couple months ago, yep. And you're right, Rich. Your 2020 population is 8,967, and that's the largest population. The next closest is Susan's at 8,700, and then Travis at 8,000, so.
It would push on these close votes, it would push more power into the city, for better or worse.
Yeah. Okay. Other comments, questions? Thank you, Mike, for bringing this information to us.
And we'll get some more.
Yeah, this is very informative. How do folks want to go forward? Do we want to have this on the agenda again next month? And that'll give you time to read this. Mike, if you have other stuff that you want to provide,
yes,
please do. And we can, I mean, if nothing else, this is definitely a learning opportunity, and we're all being a little bit more educated about process. Yeah, Susan.
I just wonder if I could get a copy of the
Oh,
population.
yeah. This might have been in,
I might have an extra one. Let me look. No, I don't make her one.
it was like a couple months ago, I think. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
I don't know if it was in the minute. It was like
I don't know if
a
it,
handout.
yeah, it was just, you handed it out. So Katrina will figure it out, and Brittany.
I have some copies.
I mean, actually, it might be interesting to send to all legislators to have, just to look at the change, so. Okay, reports. I don't have anything particular to share. I just wanted to say again and remind committee members, if there is a topic that you want to bring up or something that you want to discuss, you can absolutely do that. We don't have any really large committee goals, so it could be an educational thing, or if there is something that is important to you that you want to bring up, just let me know. And then we'll go to our county administrator. Hi, Lisa.
Good morning. Good morning. In terms of updates from county administration, you heard the biggest news, which is we finally received the grant for the strategic planning. We're very much looking forward to that. Just returned from NISAC. Dominic and I attended from administration. I'll leave him to speak about the topics of interest that he found. For me, the big takeaways and the information that I was gathering was a lot having to do with the state budget review, the economic forecast, or the overall economic forecast for the U.S., where that's heading, and then the NISAC's presentation on the state budget. What was first and foremost on everyone's mind was the FMAP funding, the intercept of the Medicaid funding, and latest news and strategy on that. The piece of that is a little bit confounding is that the state's intercept of those federal funds is formula-based. It's not technically in the governor's budget, so that the state legislature cannot act to take it out. So that's just something to be aware of. So the advocacy efforts have to be focused on the governor's office and on our federal legislators who know that the intention of those funds through the Affordable Care Act were to be shared with states and counties who pay a share in Medicaid. Of interest, on February 28th, while we were there, Governor Hochul replaced her acting budget director in the middle of the state budget season with an individual who had formerly been the budget director under the Cuomo administration and has since been in the SUNY system. So folks at NISAC saw this as he has been a friend to counties, so saw that as a good thing and someone that they know and have been able to work with in the past. And other than that, I attended a workshop on the anatomy of the cyber attack that occurred in Suffolk County and how that unfolded and what they needed to do as a result. And that these attacks have become more and more frequent in the government sector. I know our ITS department works really hard on this, and everyone is vulnerable, and the attacks just increase exponentially each year. So that was interesting to hear their response to that. And we all listened in on a presentation on economic development in Onondaga County and the attraction of Micron to the community, and how very intentional that was on the part of their county executive and the IDA to purchase the land to make that happen. So very interesting presentations. And then in the meantime, if you ask what any of us are doing in our spare time, we are participating on a number of searches that are underway or getting underway or wrapping up. So that's got us all very busy.
You have a lot going on. Sounds like NISAC was pretty interesting this year. That's great.
Yes.
Mike?
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for that report. Congressman Molinaro was here, I think, last week in the town of Dryden, and I raised this FMAP issue with him and asked him whether there was going to be any action on the federal level about this, since it's federal money coming into the New York State. He didn't say yes or no at that point, but a few days later, there was a news report that 3 upstate congresspeople, including him, have introduced a measure in Congress to protect the counties in that money. So there is something going on at the federal level.
Yes, thank you, Mike. And I appreciate our congressman's efforts toward that. That's just what we need.
I thought it was my asking the question that started it.
Yes, it probably was. And thank you, Mike.
Not really, not really.
Good job, Mike. Other questions? All right, well, thanks for being here, Lisa, and thanks for going to NISAC and bringing information back.
Absolutely, thank you.
I do not see our county attorney, so let's go to Drew Brayman, our interim finance director.
Good morning. No report really from the finance department at this point, so unless folks have questions for me.
Well, thanks for being here. Questions for Drew? No questions. You get to just sit and listen today.
Thanks.
Oh, hang on, Dan.
It's a fairly vague question. I'm trying to remember where I just read it. Maybe, Mike, it was something you sent around, I think, that there might have been some change in the tax rate, the law, the formula used for casinos and how much counties are getting?
Oh, Shauna did.
Shauna did, okay.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about that? And if you don't, that's fine. I don't want to put you on the spot.
I do not at this point, but I will definitely check into it and can report back next month.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Dominic, our communications director. Good morning.
Yeah, I have several updates. Lisa was talking about our trip to NISAC, and I have a few things to share from visiting there. There were some specific communications-focused panels and conversations there, which inspired me to go. The first one was a reporters roundtable featuring 3 Albany-based statewide reporters. And I know that Dan was there as well and had some great insights from that. But that was a great conversation. We've had a lot of those conversations here at the Public Information Advisory Board on the challenges faced by local media and how best for counties and local governments to engage with those folks. I don't know if there's any direct actions or anything to report here other than it was a good conversation and, reiterated a lot of the things that we experience. The next day there was a communications directors roundtable, which NISAC invited me to facilitate. So there was were probably 20 to 30 attendees, 5 or 6 public information officers or communication directors. Most of the room was full of elected officials from different counties who were either looking how to communicate more effectively as an elected official or on what is typically in a public information officer's job description and what they work on so that they could go back and advocate for their county to add one. So that was great. It was nice to hear from other people in similar roles to mine facing similar challenges. But it was also good because people had great things to say about what Tompkins County's been able to do. And some of our legislators attended that session as well, Ann and Veronica. So they may have some other insights. I have a few other things I wanted to share briefly. One being, I know I've shared with this committee quite a bit about the translation project for different languages for our information. We're in the final stretch, and it's looking like all of the translations of the website information will be complete on April 5th. Now, it's just a lot of information, and getting the translators time to do that is taking a little longer than anticipated, but in the month of April, we will turn on some new links on the website so that people can explore information in those languages and do a wider public launch of that then. Let's see here. There's been some talk, again on the Reporters Roundtable or the concept of supporting local media and the talk around the designation of an official newspaper and some of those areas. I have begun to get information on the 2022 spend from all of our different departments on advertising or marketing dollars that went out the door from the county. It's in all different types of budget lines. It might be in the program budget. It might be in a lot of people that I've heard, didn't budget for it originally, but used it from other unspent funds. So I'm trying to get just a sense of the receipts of, that we spent this much on radio advertising for this program or newspaper advertising, so we can get a sense of where that goes. So I'm really interested to hear more from departments, and I'll be reporting back on some of that, all in the lead up to hopefully that discussion about the designated newspaper and make sure we can have more information prepared this year. And then I can just share a few other brief things. Rob has been working on some video and photo projects that are relevant. We're working with most of the departments that offer direct services to the public. We're working on videos to explain those services. That will be a new form of content that we can share. We hear from the community, in the past that people like shorter videos or visual things. So that's going well so far, and kudos to Rob for working across all those different departments. And we're doing something similar with some photo and video of the Community Recovery Fund grant recipients. So we've offered to many of those recipients, hey, we'd love to come out and take some photos and video of what you're doing so that we can put together sort of a report at the end of the year, but also help them highlight their projects. So that's been taking up a lot of Rob's time, but the photos and videos we'll have are going to be very good. And then the last thing I'll mention is on the topic of recruiting. I've been working with HR, Ruby's team, to develop a new approach to highlighting county job opportunities. Many of you will probably have seen a call for you to fill out a form to tell us more about what types of jobs you're seeking. We sent that to all of our email subscribers. And I can report that we've had over 350 individuals tell us, this is the type of job I want, these are the professional certifications I have, this is the type of salary I'd be looking for. And so I won't go into too many details, but we will be able to advertise jobs specifically to people who are interested in that type of work. So I think that's going to change how we promote open positions for the county. It'll go to smaller, more designated groups on a more consistent basis. But we'll have a lot more data on how well that is going. So yeah, been working on a lot of things, but those are the ones that I thought were relevant to share here today.
Yeah, great, thank you. Questions, comments?
Do you ever sleep?
Not very much.
I would just add with the last topic, I hope you all have seen it, like if you're on the listservs, or it's not listserv, but you should have gotten it. And then the way Dominic explained it to the PIAB group is that with these small targeted groups, they can go through and really sell specific positions. So it's more work, I guess, a little bit, but you can really home in on, people who are looking for specific jobs, and it's very clear, the form is very clear, it's very easy to understand, and it might, draw more people in. Susan?
I think it sounds fantastic. Speaking as someone who used to be looking for staff, this sounds like a great initiative, but I don't think I've seen what you're talking about, so I wondered if I mean, it's because I started.
Yeah, I think you have to sign up for.
Yep, I can forward you some of the information.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll add on it too is that not only are people getting the advertisement for the job application, but they're also, anyone who signs up is getting, for the first 3 weeks after they sign up, one email a week about one that details, here's all the benefits that Tompkins County offers in sort of new, more exciting language. Here's our culture and values, and here's what a breakdown of what civil service is, kind of demystifying that.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Adam.
informational versus then later they could get a specific email about jobs that might interest them. So yeah, it's a good approach for sure.
Thanks.
Okay, I think we're all set. Thank you very much
Thanks,
for being
everybody.
here.
Yeah.
Anything from committee members today? Susan?
I attended NISAC. It was great. It's kind of like boot camp. Enjoyed it very much, learned a lot. There were some very interesting sessions. I did attend one on ethics, so that I make sure I don't go to jail. And then the other one that I enjoyed, I went to a lot of the sessions that have already been mentioned, but one was a session on First Amendment audits. I think, Dan, you went to that too. And that was fascinating, where people come in with their camera to be on the street reporting. And some of the examples that were used. So it was very interesting. I don't know whether that's ever been discussed here.
Can you explain it a little more? I don't understand.
First Amendment, a First Amendment audit is where a citizen on the street has a camera and wants to film an interaction either with a government office or official for newsworthy or reporting. And sometimes it's set up to be escalating, I think is the word I would use.
Gotcha.
It was fascinating to hear some of the stories, and one of the things that I heard was libraries are often targeted, and I certainly have seen that, so these days. It was fascinating, though.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I wasn't even really aware that was a thing.
It is a thing, definitely. I could tell you a good story about that here from years ago. But the other thing that was interesting was the presentation by the Onondaga County Executive. That was really interesting and exciting and sort of riveting and dramatic. There was a little short documentary film about how he managed to get this plant in Onondaga County. So.
Wow. Sounds like a great conference. Okay, anything else, Rich?
Yeah, I had conflicts, so I couldn't go, but every time I've gone to NISAC, you really learn so much. I went to the fall one in September, but it's a good thing, especially for new legislators.
I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have gone. It was perfect timing. So
last year, was it last year when we had the new legislature? We're not supposed to call them that.
Newly elected.
People who arrived sometime recently. We changed our training budget to allow them to tap into more of it.
Right.
And I would suggest that that should be available to you as well. If there's additional training you wanted to do, I would certainly support taking money out of the training budget for you to do that.
Yeah, I think we might have discussed that at some point, but I think definitely, and it's good for newly elected folks to go there and get a sense of the bigger picture. But yeah, if there's another conference that you're interested in this year, I mean, I think for newly elected people, there isn't really a fee to go to. I think they waive the conference fee. So, yeah. Mike.
Susan, that was a good report about that First Amendment thing, because our society now, everybody has a camera, everyone can take a video, everyone can record anything that's said, and to be caught off guard at Wegmans or at the parking lot out here or wherever, you don't know, you aren't expecting it, and you don't know what to say. You don't want to say something that's contrary to county policy or anything that was in executive session for certain. So it's a good caution. I'm glad to hear it.
All right, Rich.
I would say it has a nice benign name. It sounds like a good thing.
Yeah.
It's just helping. I had a different matter. I fixated and went back to weighted voting and did a little bit of math and added up, if you had a vote with 7 of the most populous districts versus 7 of the least populous districts, you could have a situation where weighted voting would matter on a 7-7 vote. But if you go to 8 votes, the math doesn't work. If you have 8 votes, you've won for one side or the other. But it would change the way we would deal with 7 votes. And right now, I believe our rules say you need 8 votes. And so we would be thinking about triggering it whenever there was a 7 vote.
Gotcha.
I think. Check my math.
I'm not good at math, but I believe you.
I don't have to check my math now. But
I just wanted to, I'm curious too. I'm not going to say anything.
Well, yeah.
I got 7.64 if the most populous districts all voted together versus 6.38. So there is a range in there where you could have a 7-7 vote where we can, we say motion fails when it did pass. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else for this committee today? Then we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.